coming. Is it okay? Is it okay?
We are in.
You can see clearly.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, viewers, good evening. I know folks in Ghana should be around 8 p.m. In Nigeria, it should be 9 p.m. And my name is Martin Petigo, and this is Political Affairs. I'm streaming live from Pennsylvania, United States of America. Today, our focus is on the Liberian presidential election. Wow. The country goes to the polls on Tuesday, on the 10th of October, 2023. 19 candidates are vying to replace President George Weah, who is seeking a second term. In 2017, George Weah won for over 61% of the vote. Can he make it this time? I don't know. I don't know whether can he really make it this time. Let us find out. I have a very special person. He's not a guest to this program. He's called Mr. Adib Sani. He is a security and a foreign policy analyst from Accra. Mr. Adib, how are you?
I'm very well, Mr. Martin. How are you too?
By the grace of God. We are here, and you know our work. We are monitoring everything from where we are, and then I know today we're going to be talking about Liberia, right? But you know, we all woke up yesterday, and then there is some slaughtering going on between the Israelis and then the Gaza. Briefly, in 2 minutes or 3 minutes, what should we be expecting? Because it looks like, I don't know whether if it's a security failure or intelligence failure. And then it's like the mighty are falling. Adib, what can you tell us before we go on this election?
Well, it's quite obvious that the ego of Israel has been badly bruised. Israel, which was hitherto seen as invincible, has been attacked in a very well coordinated, effective manner that has resulted in massive Israeli casualties, unlike we've never seen before since 1973. Like you said, a lot of security actors are asking questions: what really happened? Because we know Mossad of all intelligence agencies, very powerful with a wide outreach, able to go after Israeli adversaries in any part of the world, and they have agents within the Palestinian territories. And so many people are asking these questions. But I am not going to sit here, Martin, to say who is right or who is wrong. But surely war is wrong and peace is right. Like we always say, there is no war that is ever too justified, and there is no peace that is ever too wrong.
Right.
I will only entreat the various sides to exercise restraint, because it is the innocent that is dying more, particularly women and children on both sides.
Right.
And the land is casualties is about 300. Palestinians, the same figure. It is a sad situation. And I am a bit disappointed in the Western countries for not calling for restraints, but rather urging them on. It is sad, because what would we benefit from all this? Because it has been happening for years on end.
Right.
Almost every day, Martin, there are air raids in Gaza and other Palestinian territories. I mean, every single day when you wake up to the news, 2 Palestinians killed in Jenin, 3 killed in Rafah. It's like that. There's a cycle of violence. So when will all of these stop? I think it would only be possible with the good leadership,
Right,
good international leadership. And I would expect the US to take the lead.
right,
Once the US says stop, that is it. It's more powerful even than the UN. But if you are being urged on, if they urge, we are with this side, they have the right to defend. And under the guise of defense, more people are dying. I'm not saying Israel doesn't have any right to defend itself. It has. But what do we see? Today, a man saying goodbye to his 1 year old. Why? The 1 year old fired rockets? Hmm. It's the innocent that keeps suffering. As
right,
for the militants, Martin, they are in tunnels. So you see all these air raids, it doesn't touch them, it doesn't affect them because they are in tunnels. It's the civilians who are paying the price.
right.
So this must stop.
Yeah. But so what we are seeing, what you are saying right now, I want us to just zero in onto, is it a security and intelligence failure? Because this will just breach the border. And then within some few couple of hours, almost about 500, for now, the body counting is almost about 500 people are dead. Some have been sent to Hazard, Hamas,
Gaza.
Gaza in the tunnels. And then the dome could not even intercept some of these missiles. And in fact, it's a shake. It's a shake to the whole wide world. It's a shake to the whole world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it is really, really bad PR for Israel. You know that.
Yes, I know.
That is why the Israelis are so angry about what's going on. Because in the past, we were made to believe that Israel is invincible. Nobody can attack Israel without a good response. And even if you succeed in attacking with Israel, it will be mitigated.
Yeah,
All right. Unfortunately for them, this time around, there was a complete breakdown of intelligence. The people were even able to come in using paragliders.
right.
I don't know if you've seen the videos. They
I've
took
seen some videos
over
on our
they took over military posts. They
yeah,
were roaming in the streets of Israel from door to door. Goodness, this is unthinkable. But on the other side would say, this is what we're going through every single day. So until the killings on one side stop or the both sides stops, the killings on the side of the both sides would not also stop. So at one point, we just have to end this.
right. Okay. Adib, I think maybe next week, let's pray to God about then things will unfold. But if it's going to be possible, next week if we can dive straight into this Israeli Palestinian issue, if you have the time, I'll call on you and then we'll go into that. But today, let's go back home to Africa, West Africa, and it's Liberia. They are going to on the 10th of October. That's going to be on Monday. Liberia is going to the polls on Tuesday. Do you see this as a biggest test to democracy in the country, especially in West Africa,
There's,
concerning what
there,
is going on, the coup d'etats, etc., etc. Now, Liberia is on the center stage. Is this going to be a test to Liberia and also
surely,
West Africa?
surely, absolutely. Liberia's next elections is going to be their biggest test yet. Just as Ghana is going into an election next year, that would also be our biggest test. For Ghana's situation, I think it is not as big a test as Liberia because we have done it over and over again since the inception of the Fourth Republic. And so ours is going to be more of either we are still practicing or experimenting democracy, or really we have arrived as a consolidated democracy. Liberia is also going to be a test of whether really they have been able to uphold the principles of democracy since the end of the Civil War. Liberia has a checkered past. As you and I are aware, Ecowas was formed in 1975 as an economic community. But because of the cycle of violence in Liberia, we had ECOWAS coming together to together the ECOMOC, which first intervened militarily
Yeah.
in Liberia under General Arnold Koinu, who is a Ghanaian. You know, the Ghanaians have been very consistent and reliable when it comes to peacekeeping all across the world. I remember in 1994, when almost every country withdrew, it was the Ghanaian Senegalese contingent that was still active in Rwanda during the genocide under Romeo Dallaire. So
Right.
when he wrote his book, Shaking Hands with the Devil, he said a lot of great things about Ghana's peacekeeping contingent and his deputy, who, by the way, is Koku Anyido, whose father, who also worked tirelessly to save thousands of lives in that country. So the Ghanaian commanding officer was the first during that intervention. It was a very, very brutal war, and there's been cycles of violence. I remember in the 2000s when there was another round of violence. The killings were so much that there were calls for the US to intervene.
Right.
But the US said, no, no, owing to what had happened to them in the famous Black Hawk Down incident in Somalia.
Right.
So they failed to intervene, and people were getting killed. And guess what? The residents who were left in Monrovia were doing? They were carrying the dead bodies and placing them in front of the US embassy
I know.
as a sign of, protest. But thankfully, Liberia, due to the great work of ECOWAS, of the UN, and other international partners, have been able to um, accept democracy. And I remember one of the very early pioneers is George Weah,
George
when
Weah.
he first stood for the presidency and didn't get, he lost it to Sir Ellen Johnson. And the fact that a woman became, I think at a point, she became the only female leader in sub-Saharan Africa. It's a good sign. Then George Weah also finally became a leader.
Right.
However, there are challenges, just as many countries within the sub-region, issues of youth unemployment and the rest.
Okay.
So surely, considering the level of frustration on the ground in the country, issues of corruption, indeed, George Weah used the taxpayers' money to go to the World Cup to watch his son play. And his son wasn't playing for Liberia, he was playing for the United States. So on what basis? So all of these has caused a lot of anger in the country. And I do hope that the anger would translate into the ballot box rather than through violence.
So I know you just concluded your first submission by saying that he used the taxpayers' money to go watch the World Cup whilst his son was playing for the United States. But he won the 61% in 2017 elections. I mean, George Weah, the incumbent, won. Do you see him? Do you see him coming back as concerned to what is on the ground? Does he stand a chance?
Well, it will depend. It will depend on a lot of factors. It will depend on the strength of the other contenders, especially the main oppositions. Um, in my estimation, I think he might win on a very slim chance, on a very slim margin. However, it still doesn't take away
Yeah.
those socio-economic and geopolitical deficits in the Liberian society that can get that can let him lose votes.
Right.
Youth unemployment is still a major issue in the country. A lot of young people are without jobs, they are without education, they are without skills. And this surely is a cause for concern to a lot of analysts like myself who are closely following what's going on in that country. The level of poverty is also something to really be worried about. Liberia is not a country that is as rich with mineral resources like Ghana or Nigeria. But
Right.
that notwithstanding, there is a lot of aid that comes into the country. So there's still no excuse. Unfortunately, a lot of the population is below the poverty line. And like I indicated earlier, corruption is a major issue in that country. Some political elites have been accused of grabbing state resources illegally and living lifestyles that is very inconsistent with the average Liberian lifestyle.
Right.
Their children are seeing holidaying abroad. Their children, most of them are schooling abroad.
Mm.
They live very luxurious lifestyles when a lot of Liberians can't even afford a single meal a day. So surely, just as we have it in other African countries, it has created a lot of disenchantment, anger, frustrations amongst especially young people. And that, I must say, is going to affect him. This is in the wake of the fact that one of George Weah's strengths is actually young people. It
You-
is through young people he was able to make giant strides.
you-
They could relate with him more, you know. The fact that he's an ex-football player and the inroads he has made over the years in developing sports among young people in the country, they thought that let the old go. The old doesn't care about us. So
right.
they decided to go for George Weah, who is relatively young. But for a lot of Liberians, it's been a total disaster. However, there's this other part of the political divide that still sees him as the solution to the economic, issues in that country, and when given a second chance, would use it to just seal it off.
So can we say that the youth still have confidence in Kuya?
Some,
Some.
but largely, people don't because of what is going on. And, because of other international factors, such as the COVID 19 outbreak,
Right.
which really affected a lot of businesses, got a lot of people off jobs. It affected the international financial sector and a whole lot. Then the invasion of Ukraine by Russia has also had serious ramifications on, the social and economic dynamics of the country.
Right.
But for a lot of Liberians, they don't see it that way. For them, we have elected you. You are supposed to serve us. You promised this and that, and we expect that you deliver. If you don't, then they hold you responsible, oblivion of what is going on within the international community. And this is what I must say is going to affect him. But if he's going to win, um, he would win based on the fact that the challenge from the opposition is not challenging enough. And of course, some would still relate with him. But like I indicated, it's definitely not going to be in the 60s. I predict it will be in the early 50s.
Right. Let's jump and let's zero on the vice president, the former vice president, Joseph Boakasi, is said to be running his last political race at the age of 78. He really pulled a surprise to Weah.
It will depend. It will depend on his track record. It will depend on how he's related with the people. He's been in power before. He's tasted it. But when I speak with people on the ground, they see everybody as part of the existing establishment that is not going to do anything to address their social and economic challenges. I spoke with a friend of mine. By the way, I have a lot of Liberian friends. I remember when I was on campus, I used to go to the Buduburam camp, We used to hold events for them aimed at getting the youth busy so they don't engage in criminal activities. So I have a lot of Liberian friends, and some of them have since returned to Liberia, but we're still in touch. And they see all of these people, including the former vice president, as part of the establishment who didn't do anything for them. And so, I mean, some have decided that they are not even going to vote in the first place. But if the former vice president is able to keep tap on young people, because Martin,
Yeah.
Africa has a large youth population. I think the median age in Africa is about 18,
Yeah.
18, 19, the whole of Africa. That is a very extremely young population. And for many continents, some would even wish their median age was 20. So, Africa, we have it all. We have a lot of opportunities. We have the mineral resources, we have the human resources. That is why I always say that Africa has no reason to be poor. Ghana has no reason to be poor. Nigeria is just inexcusable. Nigeria is fantastically rich. Look, if the Nigerian resources, okay, if let's say 50% had gone to the people, the 100%, no, just take 50, the few of you, the 1% of you,
Right.
and leave the 50 for the Nigerian people. Trust me, we would have all brain drained to Nigeria. Nigeria has no excuse.
Right.
But what do we see? Plundering, corruption with no
Failure.
accountability.
We'll say failure in leadership as usual. It looks like that's what.
Surely, surely, I work very closely with the diplomatic community.
Yeah.
And when you are chatting with them, they are very careful about the things they have to say. But surely, the last time I had extensive discussions with them, their number one issue, Martin, like you said, is leadership.
Leadership.
We need that strong leadership to say, no, enough is enough. Because I remember I was having a discussion with someone, and the person asked me, you, Adib Sani, talking all over the place. If you are put there, would you do anything different? It wasn't easy for me to answer that question because it's a system. you know, if you dare be different, you'll be kicked out.
Right.
You get me?
Yeah.
Unless you have people to support that cause. I remember when President Nana Addo Akufo-Addo started this Galamsey fight, illegal mining fight in Ghana. He said he was willing to put his presidency on the line. But
Right.
what do we see today? More Galamsey. All right. So a lot of this is synonymous with what is happening within the African continent. And many people are frustrated and don't know what to do. Just recently, there was a demonstration over losses at the Bank of Ghana. The
Yeah.
Bank of Ghana actually made about a $5 billion loss. And after the demonstration, which was, by the way, very peaceful, um, the Bank of Ghana governor said they were hooligans and they could have found more civilized ways to register their displeasure over what is happening. So, I mean, you can imagine. And when they got to the Bank of Ghana, they were not allowed to present a petition to the Bank of Ghana governor. They were not allowed to. And there's a lot of directors there, so many. They sent their head of security. I mean, that was an insult.
So unfortunate.
You
I
see,
mean, when it
you,
comes
you see what's going on in Africa.
to the
Uh,
democratic process, I think going on demonstrations and all is also part of the democratic package. But unfortunately, when the incumbents, when the opposition gets into power, and then the people want to demonstrate, then they have a problem. But when they were in opposition, they loved demonstration. It's so unfortunate. Before we move on to West Africa, ECOWAS, why they are sending almost about the IT strong team to go help. Let's talk about this gentleman called Alexander Kumi, who is a businessman. The Liberians trusted a footballer with their presidency.
yeah.
They want to try a businessman. What do you say about it?
Liberia's history. It is a place for freed slaves from America.
Right.
Okay, so they have a lot of things in common with the Americans. Even sometimes the way they speak the English. They slur it. And I have friends called Bush, Jeb,
Yeah.
uh, White Bridge,
Right.
Bridgewater, those names. And so they have a lot of commonalities with um, the Americans. I'm saying this based on what happened in 2016 in the US when Trump first announced he was going to stand for the presidency. I think that was in 2015, and how laughable it sounded. And years down the line, we saw what happened. He was elected.
Right.
He became the president of the United States based on his business track record. Because it was all about my business, my business. I was able to grow a business empire. I did this, I did that. Okay.
Right.
Um, I wonder whether Liberians are politically matured enough to distinguish between going for a solid candidate they believe can deliver and experimenting. So like you said, they tried a footballer.
Right.
Now the businessman is saying, okay, you've tried this, you've tried that. Why don't you try me? Okay, so it also depends on the um, amount of support he can galvanize. Okay, in the US currently, I don't know. Okay, I mean, I shouldn't even ask this question. You should understand it better than I do. Rashwa Wami,
Yeah.
the new kid on the block.
Right.
He's also a businessman,
Yes.
and he's worth a lot of money. He's also going in based on his track record. And I'm wondering whether Americans would want to repeat the Donald Trump debacle like they did in 2016. But in Liberia, I doubt strongly that he'll be able to, make any meaningful inroads. But
I doubt.
considering the number, but you see, Martin,
Yeah.
considering the number of parties, it makes me wonder
19
what I mean,
dates.
what the motive is. You could bring yourself into a great alliance of some sort, okay, and like it happened in Kenya, and try to contest the establishment. If really you are well-meaning and you want the best for the Liberian people, but if you see a penchant for power with everybody wanting to be in power, then you should have to ask legitimate questions. Just like in Ghana, everybody wants to be an MP. Meanwhile, they keep complaining. It is not easy. It is difficult. MPs are suffering. MPs are doing this. People are worrying us for money. Yet people would kill to be MPs. Then I go like,
Sorry.
there should be something in there. There should be something in there. I would also want to be an MP. I want to see. If it's not good, I get out. Okay. And so if you have a lot of people wanting power, it makes you wonder whether really, really they are committed to addressing the issues in Liberia, or just they
Right.
just want.
Let's look at ECOWAS. ECOWAS and AU has sent a strong IT team to help the National Election Commission, NEC, of Liberia. What do you make of such a move?
It's a great move, very, very great move, because you see, when you look at a lot of the conflicts situations involving elections in Africa, it has a lot to do with confidence in the process. And I'll give you some examples. In 2007, when Kenya was going into the election, which was closely contested between the People's National Union and the Orange Democratic Movement, there was a lack of confidence in the process, and
Right.
that was the Independent National Electoral Commission of Kenya, and that resulted in a lot of confusion, and many people died, and that is when Condoleezza Rice, then Secretary of State, arrived in Nairobi and gave it will not be as business, it will not be the usual business speech, which gained a lot of traction. Then President Bush spoke with President John Ajay Kufuor, who was the AU chair, to do something about it. That is when Kofi Annan of blessed memory was called in to go and engage in what we call shuttle diplomacy between the two. That ended in a power sharing agreement. But surely the issue of the Independent National Electoral Commission really came into the spotlight, and something had to be done about building confidence in the electoral process. Secondly, in 2010, when Alassane Ouattara went into an election with Laurent Gbagbo, at the point of the results being announced, someone took it from the officer right in front of the international media, tore it into shreds because they felt they didn't trust the, the process.
Right.
Okay, so if we have an external big, body like Ecowas sending in help to better streamline the electoral system, it's good. That's good. Even in Nigeria, still people are complaining about the fact that Tinubu's election, even though the Supreme Court says no, it's legitimate, but they are still complaining that it wasn't legitimate and there was some sort of malfeasances going on in there. All right. Even in Ghana, we have just that the good thing with Ghana is anytime it happens that way, it goes to the courts. And once the courts determine that's it, it brings finality to it. But in Liberia, it might be different. That is why we need to build confidence in that process. And I welcome strongly
Right.
ECOWAS's decision to send that, IT infrastructure
Right.
to help, help them hold a free, fair, credible election that would represent the will of the people and would not get any of the political parties crying wolf, which might invariably result into violence.
It's ECOWAS has also dispatched almost about 120 observers for this Tuesday election in Liberia. What do you think should be their priority to ensure free and fair and credible elections? The 120
Well,
observers.
well, I think what they did need to do is like they always do. They map out there's the name they call it, but the red zones.
Okay.
Sometimes you would designate the zones: highly critical, critical, moderate critical, not critical, peaceful. You get me? So by identifying those areas, they'll be able to place observers. Because the thing about observer missions is they cannot be everywhere all the time. All right. And if there's collaboration between various observer missions, just as we have with ECOWAS, would have with AU, would have with the European Union, would have, you get me? Because a lot of these people are my friends and I know how they do it. Recently, I was at the West Africa Mining Security Conference organized by the Australian High Commission. And I've met quite a number of them. Some were even from Chatham House. And we had extensive discussions about how they go about these things. So when the AU observer mission is at point A, the ECOWAS would be at point B,
Okay.
the EU would be at point C. We don't need to have the three be at point A. You get me? So there will be, better monitoring of what's going on in the country. But their main focus area should be on people's rights to exercise their, democratic right. The
Right.
thing about a lot of the elections in Africa is voter suppression. We
Okay.
have serious issues with voter suppression. If I cannot rig, what I'll do is to delay the electoral materials from arriving, or I might just,
Right.
create artificial sense of insecurity, so
Okay.
people would leave
Right.
rather than start. Because when I'm at the polling station going to cast my ballot,
Right.
and there's a single gunshot, I'll just leave. Trust
Yeah.
me. I'll
With this,
just go home and be with my family.
yeah, with this strategy that you've just outmapped, when it comes to Ghana's election, we see this at play in our elections or during our voting period.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
do see them
We
at
see
play.
it
But
a lot of the
we
times.
still hear of gunshots and ballot balls being snatched, etc., etc.
Well, it has reduced drastically, I must say. We have improved on a lot of things. But the biggest challenge the last election was after the days casted, when the ballot boxes are taken in for the counting and eventual certification. uh, there's always a bit of a confusion. And you remember uh, there was some deaths that happened, I think, in either Tichman or Kintampo.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure about it. It's either Tichman or Kintampo, in which some people died. It had to do with, the sanctity of the electoral materials. People felt that someone was up to something. So surely, um, you know, we cannot have an election that is 100% Martin, even in the US.
Right.
Remember, stop the steal, stop the steal, stop the steal. That eventually led to the,
And
unfortunate
I'll ask
incident.
you a question at the end of this whole show. I would like you to tell me about the genesis of this ballot snatching and thing. I mean, 66 school during Kwame Nkrumah's election, did we have anything like that? I mean, where did this ballot board AK-47 on the polling station? When did all these things start? From
They
Nigeria?
are emboldened. People are emboldened. Okay, there are political parties would pay them pittance of about $2
Yes.
or $5.
So
And when they know that at this polling precinct, like you call it, we are losing, it looks like it's not good. They just send these boys on that suicide mission to snatch it and destroy it.
right,
So you subvert the will of the people.
right.
And that is what has happened in the past. But this time it has reduced because they have different ways and means
Okay.
of going about, engaging in electoral fraud.
Right.
And one of it, like I said, is voter suppression. Even delaying the arrival of electoral materials is
Right.
voter suppression. Because when I stand in the queue early morning, I haven't eaten yet.
Mhm.
And I come there at 7 a.m. and I'm there until 10 a.m., 11 a.m., and materials haven't arrived. What would I do? I just simply leave.
Right. Let's look at another question on this subject on this Liberia election. Now you are the
Mhm.
security expert. Whenever there are security issues, you are the first I call. How should security be handled before, during, and after the election, considering the country's history in civil war?
Well, a lot has happened in Liberia over the years. There's been demobilization, there's been disarmament, there's been reintegration. Former child soldiers have been put in school. Um, a lot of psychology went into reorienting them because some of them, um, grew up in the jungles, fighting. So, based on that history, a lot has changed about the country, and I think they are on course. Ours is to ensure that we don't still have illegal guns in the system. I do know there was a lot of disarmament that happened in that country. Unfortunately, in recent years, because of what happened in Libya, Tunisia, and other countries in North Africa, there was a steady stream of weapons into the Sahel region, which is restive, by the way, which has found its way into sub Saharan Africa, including a lot of these countries within the coastal areas like Ghana, Benin, Togo, Ivory Coast, the rest. And these weapons are used by transnational organized criminal networks. There are some individuals whose work it is to traffic weapons to be used for crime. Others are used for internal conflicts. So if these weapons fall into the hands of these political actors, it might be a source of intimidation. It might be a tool for intimidation
Right.
of their political opponents, which would elicit retaliatory, attacks, and that would plunge the country into chaos. I hope that it doesn't happen with proper security arrangements on the ground, um, with proper peace building efforts in place, especially by civil society organizations. My center, for example, the Center for Human Security and Peace Building, has been doing a lot in that regard. We
Right.
don't wait when it's election year or election month, like we see the NCC, the National Commission for Civic Education, do in Ghana. Then you start telling the people to give peace a chance. No, you build the peace. So you don't only have to do peace campaigns during an election. but you have to do it way before the election. And I think that is what would get people to understand the benefits of peace, and so they embrace it.
Yeah. Adib Sani, in fact, I wanted to go on and on and on with you, but unfortunately, I just received the timer from our producer. The time is almost up. But before we wrap up, can you just give me a jig of what is happening in Ukraine and Russia? You know, the last time you were here, we were talking about Ukraine and Russia, and it looks like the war is still going on.
I think there's a stalemate. Okay,
Yeah,
nobody's winning territory at this time. And the unfortunate thing is the Ukrainians thought they could go on a counter-offensive. They got a lot of Western weapons, but it didn't happen. Currently, as we speak, if you watch the news, there are reports of the Ukrainians running out of ammunition. But what I find rather interesting is how Russia, which was running out of ammunition last year, still has ammunition. You remember those media stories? Well, Russia has completely depleted its World War II stockpile, its Cold War stockpile, and all. But they still have the weapons and the ammunition, and Ukraine is running out. So surely, it's not going very much in favor of the Ukrainians. And I think the Russians are deliberately making this become a stalemate in anticipation of the elections in the US next year.
right.
Do you know the
War.
Republicans are not so keen on what's going on in Ukraine?
Yes.
And Donald Trump has said, look, if I'm elected, I'll stop the war. I'll stop the aid. You see, so the elections for US next year, trust me, is what is going to make or break for the Ukrainians going forward.
Yeah.
All right. If the Democrats win, they
Yeah.
will continue the aid. If the Republicans win, I'm sorry to say, it's going to be a significant game changing, thing. So
We
we just wait to see.
I think on the world stage, we saw Putin going to North Korea for ammunitions, going to China for ammunitions, going to India for ammunitions, and it looks like he's just stonewalling until we get into the cold, and then he will
Okay,
launch his attack, and then that will be it. I don't know, but this is the way I observe things from where I am.
okay. So the ammunition, so far as U.S. European intelligence is concerned,
Right.
the only two sources, major sources, the Russians are getting arms from is, I think, so far the only source. Let me put it that way is Iran, because they provided their Shahid drones. So far as I am concerned,
Yeah.
and so far as Western intelligence is concerned, North Korea hasn't even given Russia ammunition yet.
Mm.
They are only warning that if you do, would place more sanctions on you. So, I mean, that is quite phenomenal because Ukraine has had ammunition from over 40 countries,
Right.
you know,
Wow.
and,
Yes.
and Russia doesn't, the only thing I think they got from Iran is the Shahid drones. All right. So it should tell you how much of a stockpile and the industrial weapons complexes, the amount of weapons they are producing by the day. But
Yeah.
like I said, no war is ever too good and no peace is ever too bad.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, our own big brother, our big brother, whenever he comes, we don't want to end the program. Mr. Adib Sani, he is a security and foreign analyst, policy analyst, policy analyst in Ghana. Mr. Adib, thank you so much for spending special time with us. And hopefully, maybe next week or next 2 weeks, if the war between Israel and Gaza is still going on, we'll have you on this program so they can throw more light to.
I pray you don't. I pray you don't have me. Yes, because you said if it is still going on, you would have me. So I don't want it to go on. So I pray you don't have me. Maybe
Remember,
we'll be talking about a different one.
last year I asked you if the war between Ukraine and Russia is still going on. I'll have you here. Anyway, I want to thank
Thank
you
you.
so
Thank
much.
you
I
so
really
much.
appreciate you. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Martin Petigo, and I'm streaming live from Pennsylvania. Comma. That's political affairs, and we have Mr. Adib Sani, who is a security and foreign policy analyst streaming straight from Ghana to throw us light more about the Liberian elections. Let's pray for Liberia. Let's hope that everything goes on successful so that at least on the West African sub-region, we can say that democracy has come to stay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. My name is Martin Betigo, and see you next week.